Hey everybody, it's Jacques with Motor Files. We're on episode 5. Today we're going to be working on a really interesting bike. It's got an interesting paint job and it looks like a bike I've featured on the channel before, but I haven't featured this one. So I'm going to go walk over to where it's living and kind of give you a brief history on it, and then I'll show you what we need to do to get this thing back on the road. All right, stay tuned. The bike in question is the other bike living under the gray tarp, and it's pretty cool.
Okay, let's go.
So this bike is absolutely disgusting. This is the other F650 that we have as part of the Motor Files fleet. It was originally a kind of a restoration slash revival project. Found this on the side of a closed auto dealer or maybe auto repair shop. It was a few years ago, I don't exactly remember. Anyway, it was neglected in a field for several years and just rotting away. So during kind of the later part of the COVID pandemic, I had some free time, and so we kind of brought this thing back to life, and it ended up being my girlfriend's first real road going motorcycle that she kind of learned on. She had a little Virago before that, a little 535, and maybe I'll feature some of those videos in the channel coming up. But after, I don't know, about 8 or 9 months of riding it, she ended up getting a 650, a G650 GS that we featured, kind of brought back to life after a road trip on the channel. So this one, I believe we're going to kind of part with. So I'm going to get into what it needs to get it back on the road and in a sellable condition. It's been sitting under this tarp for about, I don't know, 2 years or so. So it should run. We'll find out here shortly. I'm going to go get this bike pushed over to my work area, and let's tear into it and see what it needs. Here she is in all her glory. Has 25,000 original miles. Couple of things that are missing off of it. I had a skid plate down here, a little plastic one that mounts here. I still have that. Just pulled it off, as well as the front fender is missing. I have that. I had to borrow the ignition out of it for my 99 because I had my ignition break. So we're going to work on fixing that and putting an ignition back in it. Everything else is pretty much factory. Obviously, it's got this Raptor liner Escobar paint job on it. I think what we're gonna do is pull the panels off and paint them black. The rest of the trim panels have a black truck bed liner on them to kind of give it the Stormtrooper look. I think this will sell better if it was all black. So we're gonna work on getting that done in this video, or maybe in this video series. It's honestly just been sitting for a little too long. So really what I think we need to do is drain the gas out of it. Gas is probably disgusting. I felt a little bit in the tank when I was pushing it over here. We're going to pull the front fairing off, see if I can hook up my broken ignition. It still works. I ended up having to drill it out. So we'll see if I can hook up my broken ignition to it and get the bike to crank over. Maybe we'll see if it idles after that, but I doubt it just because of how long it's been sitting. Carbureted engines tend to pick up junk. So we may have to tear it down and pull the carbs off. So we'll see about that. Looks like the last time it had tabs on it was 2023, so definitely been 3 years or so. And then we'll clean it all up. We'll get it running good, and then maybe get it listed for sale. And I'll talk about, after we get it sold, I'll talk about what's next on the channel as far as fun bikes. I mean, I think it makes sense to get rid of this bike because we're not really riding it, and it's a great beginner bike for somebody who wants to get out there and ride. So very cool. I will open up the door here and start tearing into it and see if we can get the front fairing off, hook my ignition up, and see if it cranks over. See you in a bit. trim piece right here that kind of covered up this whole rider's left side of the bike. Pulling it off, that's a fuel filter. Oh, it's supposed to be a fuel filter. That fuel does not look the color it should be. So I've got a spare gas can here. I'm gonna hook up an extra piece of fuel line. We're gonna drain all the fuel out of it because that is disgusting. Once I got it hooked up, flipped over to reserve, we can see the fuel is running through it. It's not as bad as I thought it was, which is a good thing. And maybe it was just that little piece or that little bit of fuel that was sitting in this filter. We're gonna drain it out anyway because it stinks. So I've got it hooked up to this long neck gas can. We're gonna let that go. We got the fairing off. As you can see, it revealed the underpinnings of this F650. I mentioned that I had another one of these in my last video and kind of did a walk around of that. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But I'm very familiar with these machines. So I have a spare ignition from my last bike that this one kind of ran into an issue, got punched out when I parked it somewhere. Not the best situation. But anyway, so it still works. It's just, the steering lock on the ignition doesn't engage down here. Normally this would mount behind this dashboard and then it plugs into these two plugs right here. So what I'm gonna do is plug these in and we'll see if the key works when I turn it on. And then this is our driving light. So this should turn on. Actually, just kidding, it's busted, but we should have some lights on the dash once I hook this up if the battery's still good, and then we'll see if it cranks. If it doesn't crank, that means the battery's toast. Unfortunately, I don't have the key to the seat. It's in a different jacket, so I'm gonna have to go get that. But we can at least start on some other things in the meantime while I go get that sorted. So let's see if I hook this up and the ignition turns on and we get some lights in the dash. Up top here, here's the makeshift ignition for right now. We do have our light instrument cluster right here, as well as the backlights for these gauges should light up when I hit the key. So I'm gonna turn the key on and let's see if we have some battery juice. Okay, good. It does look like we might have some lights working in the gauges. It's kind of hard to tell. But I'm gonna hit the horn. That's not good. Let's put it in neutral. So it looks like the neutral light is on. Might be hard to see. Let's see if it cranks. And it's not cranking. So that means that our battery is super low. When I hit the horn button, this barely blinks. Ran into a bit of an issue. So looking through all my keys, the only set of keys I have to get under the seat to pull the rest of these panels off are in a different location than my little shop here. So what I'm gonna do is I've pulled the front end off, as you saw in an earlier part of the video. All of the panels that are white, Escobar finish, those are all going to turn black. So what I'm going to do is, in the meantime, I'll have to pick up this video tomorrow, but before we end today, I'm going to pull this front panel apart so that way we can get it ready to repaint it. So let's get to that, and then we'll put a cover on this bike and we'll pick it up tomorrow once I get the proper key so we can pull the seat off and get the rest of the panels off and check out some more of the fluids. We're inside now, my workbench here. I've got the front end panel, the face of the bike, if you will, up here on the bench. So next up, I'm going to pull the windscreen off here. It's just 4 screws, and then there's a black trim piece, kind of face panel under there. So we'll pull those off. And then underneath, I've got a headlight bucket that mounts right here. So we're going to pull that off because we're not going to paint that. And then I've got these 2 turn signals to pull out because we're going to paint the backside of them. They're a little oxidized. So that should get us to the next phase for these parts, and then once I have the key tomorrow, I'll go through, I'll pull the rest of the parts off, and we'll get those ready to get sprayed as well. Perfect. Got this body panel stripped down. You can see it was originally flame red like my other Funduro with a cocaine white, or excuse me, Pablo Escobar white paint job, Raptor liner. So that's why we're going black, is some of the edges and stuff underneath some of the panels kind of poke through red. So we're going to make that all uniform and then give it a little bit more of an aggressive look. And I think it will look really nice with the Raptor liner coating on it. That's where I'm going to leave it today. I'm going to go get those keys like I talked about before. We'll get the rest of the body panels pulled off and cleaned up, and then we'll talk about next steps tomorrow. It is day 2, and I got the keys. So we'll be able to pull the seat off, pull the panels off. Hopefully we can get the bike started. I'm excited to see what the condition of the carbs are in after sitting for so long. Obviously knew from yesterday that the battery's flat, so we'll see if we can jump it with the jump box. So let's get into it. I'm going to pull the cover off, pull the panels off, and then we'll pick up where I think we need to connect the jump box, and I'll talk a bit more about some of the things we had to do to get this bike running initially. Stripped down nicely. As you can see, there's definitely some nasty stuff on the carb boots, on the tank. So probably shouldn't be standing too close to it. Luckily, it's outside. There's a nice breeze, so I'm not really breathing these spores in all that much. We definitely need to hose this thing off, and we will before we reassemble it, just to get some of that nasty stuff off. It definitely stinks a little bit. So what I've got going on here is I've got my jump box hooked up to the battery. We're going to turn that on here in a second and see if it cranks over with my ignition hooked up. So yeah, hopefully we get some life out of it. And if the engine cranks a little bit, we will then spray some starting fluid or some brake cleaner in the intake right here. See if it kicks off. And if it kicks off, I may hook up a gas tank to it and see if we can get it to idle. Hopefully we can get it to idle. That'll be a good sign. Then we'll move on to the next phase. So definitely going to pull this battery out and see if I can revive the battery. Let's turn my jump box on and see if we get some life out of this thing. So turn it to on. Hit the on switch. Well, that's good. We've got a lot of juice. Let's see if it cranks. Awesome. So the engine's not locked up. That's good. Let me hook up the gas real quick with the choke on, put a little gas in it, and then we'll see if we can get it to fire off. Still have the charger on. I put a little bit of gas in it, so we're gonna flip it over to reserve. We got some gas moving through the filter, it looks like. It's dripping a little bit. Don't need much, just a little bit to fire off. Let's choke on, see if she cranks. Get some more. Half choke it, maybe it's flooded. Looks like it's not wanting to fire off. Let me go get some carb cleaner, spray it in the intake, and see if we can get it to fire off a little bit and at a full idle. Get a quick spritz in there. Let's see if we can get it to fire off. Get some choke. Well, that worked. Let's let her idle for a little bit. just to get some gas through it, and then I'll turn the idle down. Here, let's see. Well, that worked better than I thought it would. So it seems like we have either a clogged jet or maybe just the old gas isn't really helping it idle much. But let me see if I can get it to run a bit longer and see if that'll clean it out. Definitely should put some fresh gas in it. Oh no. I see our issue. It seems to be dripping gas, which means we probably have a stuck float, or yeah, it's probably the stuck float and it's causing it to overflow. So let me see if I can tap that with a screwdriver and a hammer. Sometimes that'll release the float, and then we'll fire it up again and see if we can get it to idle more consistently. Kind of hard to do this one-handed, so I just did it off camera, but all you do is you take a flathead screwdriver, and if you tap it with a hammer just on this float bowl right here, it's twin carbs, so the other carb back here, sometimes that gets the floats and the carbs to free up a little bit, and it should stop it from leaking out the overflow. So let's see, I'll turn it on to reserve, and it looks like we still have it leaking out the overflow. That also looks like it's maybe just leaking out of the feed itself. Let's go around and look on the other side. Yeah, no, it's definitely the overflow, which means carbs have to come off. We learned a few things here. A, battery's definitely dead, so we need to address that. B, we have a somewhat running bike. It seems like we have a clogged main jet or a possible idle jet. So we should pull the carbs off. We'll go through the carbs, just see if we can get some of the junk out of them. Hopefully it'll run better. And then we'll have to pull looks like we have to pull the airbox out and the battery out in order to do that. I believe the tank also has to come off. So what we're gonna do, so I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get a few tools, and let's break this down, yank these carbs out, and then we'll go over what I'm going to look for cleaning the carbs out once I get them on the bench. So time to get to work, time to yank some parts out. It's been a while since I pulled one of these bikes apart to get the carbs off, but here's our carbs. I believe they're Makunis. Pretty weird. Italian-German bike with Japanese carbs. They're flat slide, so definitely help with the performance of this thing. That took a minute, but I got everything out. I forgot how much of a pain in the ass the airbox was. You probably saw me on the time-lapse messing around with that. You end up having to take the entire exhaust off. Wait, let me show you. So here's where we are. I had to pull the entire exhaust off, airbox out, all the vent lines out, carbs out, fuel tank off, all the body panels off except for the rear body panels. And that's where we're going to leave it for right now. So I'm going to clean up my mess a little bit. You got tools everywhere. Organize the takeoff parts, and then we're going to... Ooh, it's still leaking. I'm going to make sure these are drained before I bring them inside. We're going to pull the float bowls off, and we're going to check all the jets, make sure they're nice and clean, see if there's any O-rings that need to be changed out. I did notice some leakage coming out of this crossover tube, so while it's out, we'll put a new hose on there. We'll make sure that's nice and tight. That should be good for the carbs. They ran decently well. I just think we have some clogged jets just from nasty gas sitting in there for too long. Before I pick up today, I'm also going to put some, piece of cloth to plug up these intake boots. That way nothing creepy crawly or washers or water gets into the motor. Everything else we will button up, and then we'll get these carbs cleaned up and slap back in the bike. Well, we made it to the next phase of the project. We're going to take a little lunch break before we dive into these carbs right here. Let the gas smell kind of air out. I got the window open, the fan going. In the meantime, I will also charge the battery, hopefully. If not, we'll have to go get a new one before we put it all back together. And then we will dive into the needles and seats and jets and see how everything's looking. Maybe replace a few O-rings and clean out all the jets. Hey everybody, we are back. I'm very excited about this. So we have a new camera set up, a new microphone set up. So hopefully my audio will be coming in a lot crisper and a lot better. I initially left this part of the video taking a lunch break. Well, it turns out it was a much longer lunch break than expected. So we're still going to get these carbs tidied up and check the jets, make sure they're nice and clean. I did notice on one of the crossover tubes, it seemed like it was leaking a little bit, so we're going to address that. I'm going to go pull these float bowls off and get you all set up, and then we'll pick up once I have some of these jets pulled out. Let me show you what I look for when I'm cleaning carburetors. So this set of carbs, I'm not exactly going to do a full breakdown, clean and rebuild. I'm mainly just going to check the idle jet, the main jet, and make sure the float and needle are working properly. I think that's the main issue with our sustained idle issue we were running into. I think that's the main problem with our sustained idle issue we were running into, is that we had some junk in the idle jet and the main jet. So first up, I've already done this side as you saw a little bit ago. Now I'm going to work on, I guess this would be rider's right. Doesn't really matter, they're basically the same. But most float bowls have 4 screws that hold them on. It looks like these float bowls only have 2, which is kind of intriguing. So I'm just going to undo those real quick. So first thing to look for when you pull the float bowl off is to see in the bottom of the float bowl if you have any debris or deposits in the float bowl itself. These are really clean. And then you want to look at the gasket around the float bowl. Make sure you don't have any splits, any dry rotting. I rebuilt these carbs not too long ago, so I think we mainly just have a clogged jet issue, so we're going to look at that. But that confirms that everything inside the float bowl is clean, especially because it's been sitting for a while. I'm going to put those aside, keep the screws with it. Next up, this is the bottom of your carb. So you have, quite literally, you can see it, you have a float that sits right here, and then you have a jet. It might be hard to tell. As the as the float bowl fills with gasoline, these floats are going to float and then push the jet up to stop the flow of gasoline. That's one of the issues with carbs, is sometimes this jet will get clogged or stuck, and it'll have them stuck down like this, because most of the time the float bowl will evaporate after sitting and it'll just let gasoline flood through. I don't think that's the issue. It seems like we have pretty free floats, but one thing I am going to do is I'm going to adjust the float down a bit so it'll be a bit more sensitive to the float level. So then, get out of the way. I'm going to flip these over upside down. A bit closer. I'm going to flip these over, and then we're going to pull the float mechanism out. This has a clipped needle, which is kind of nice. And so even though it was held on, I dropped it, motor files fashion. Give me 1 second, let me go find that. But anyway, so this needle has a rubber tip on it, which helps kind of seal when the floats go up. Downside of that is rubber eventually does melt, so it could cause there to be an issue with clogging. Anyway, so I pulled my float and needle out. Here we are at the bottom of the carburetor. Might be hard to tell, but I'll move up. You have your idle jet here, which is a super tiny hole. You have and then your main jet here, which is the main gas draw. That's going to be a significantly larger hole. The reason why after your bike's sitting for too long, you might have an idle issue is because this tiny little jet's going to get clogged. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the jet out, and then I'll show you an easy way to fix that real quick, so that way you'll actually have decent idle if your carbs are in decent shape. You don't need to rebuild your carbs every time you have a problem. Sometimes you just got to go adjust it. So I'm going to unscrew this. Now, people always want to buy new carbs and they're clogged. The beauty behind carbs is you can rebuild them. So I'll unscrew this. Let me see if I can get that jet to drop out. Boom. So here's my little jet, super tiny. And it appears that there is a clog. I can't see through it, and you're not going to be able to see this on camera. So what I recommend doing is if you ever have carbureted bikes, this is a K&L Carb tool, and it's basically different thicknesses of reamers here. And so you can go through, you can check each jet, and then ream them out and clean it up. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to clean all these jets out, put everything back together. The only other thing I'm going to do on these carbs before we go and throw it on the bike is right here. This is the main fuel feed line. There's a crossover fitting right here. And there's 2 O-rings on this crossover fitting that provides sealing. So when the gasoline feeds to the carburetors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop off these carburetor bars here and here. Separate the carburetors, check both crossover tube O-rings, replace them if I need to, and then put everything back together. So I'm going to... Good news and bad news. So it turns out both idle jets were definitely clogged. So we got those cleaned out. These connecting bars are JIS screws, which I don't have a JIS screwdriver. I should go buy one. So I didn't want to strip it out with my standard Phillips because that would cause more headaches than it's worth. I do have a sneaking suspicion, however, that maybe the joint that this feed line connects to could have not been sealing all the way. So I threw a fuel injection hose clamp on there, which is significantly stronger than a standard hose clamp. It's just got more surface area, more clamping area. So give that a good tighten, line that up. There is a way to test carbs without them on the bike, and that's called a bench test. So what I'm going to do is I notice a cracked vacuum cap here, which I guess were on these. So I'm going to replace that, and then I'm going to hook a fuel bottle up to it and turn it on, and we'll see if these carbs start leaking. We'll make sure that the bleed screws are shut. Perfect. All right. And if they don't leak, then we're going to throw them on the bike and call it good. Like I said, we are parting with this bike, so, getting them perfectly dialed will be up to the next curator of it. Everything else seems great. The slides are moving great. No issues there. The throttle body looks great. So perfect. I will get that replaced, and then we'll go get our bench test set up. Here's my bench test setup. Just to show you, I have pinpointed the problem with the carbs, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I just have the fuel tank flipped around, so our petcocks right here. I've got a couple of these 4x4s set up, so I can just set the carbs and let them hang down. So you just want them to be kind of parallel, like they were mounted to a motorcycle. And then I turn the fuel on, the fuel runs down, fills up the float bowls, and then if anything drips, it's caught in this oil pan. Turns out that my suspicions were correct. This crossover joint right here is leaking at the O-ring. You can see how it's kind of wet. So I've already drained the float bowls. At first when I connected it, I'd done some of this off camera. The old line was really hard, and sometimes you can get like hairline cracks and dry rot, and so that could cause a leak. So I had some fresh fuel line laying around, so I swapped it out. Pro tip 2, if it doesn't quite fit, a little bit of lube goes a long way. Put the new fuel line on after I saw it was leaking with the old fuel line. Pinpointed that that wasn't the issue, that the leak is actually coming from this crossbar right here. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get these bars off, unfortunately. Fortunately, I'll be able to, I have a bunch of O-rings, so I'll be able to swap this O-ring out and put in one that's maybe not cracked or dry rotted and causing this problem. Captain's log, we have major success on this front. Was able with some PB Blaster to separate the carburetors. So I have that one sitting right here. And we found the root of our issue. It may be hard to focus the pointer, but there's an O-ring on each side of this T. It might be hard to see, but it's the main fuel feed line that tees between the carburetors when they're connected. And it looks like one of them on this right side here is crushed, and so that's what's causing our leak. So I'm gonna go hunt around in my, oh, there's a split. It's hard to see, but there's a split right there. Even better. I'm gonna go hunt around in my parts and things and see if I can come up with a solution for this. I'm dirty. We have carbs at work. Thank the Lord. I had to get a little creative. Made 2 different types of gaskets with some pipe thread tape for this crossover. Like I said, this is mostly just a semi-permanent fix, just because I had to raid a carb kit I had for one of these with some spare parts from a different rebuild. There were some old parts. So went through it, got the carbs tidied up. They don't leak. Hopefully they won't leak when I put them on the bike. Otherwise I'm going to tear my hair out, or what's left of what I haven't already torn out. But it should work great. So I'm going to go put these on the bike, cover it up, and then I'll show you what we're going to do next. It's exciting. Perfect. Carbs are on. Bike's slowly coming together. I'm excited for what's planned next. This thing's going to really turn out cool. But for right now, I'm going to finish picking up my tools, pick up my mess I made here, and then we'll forget about the carbs for now. Fingers crossed they start once I get the airbox put back on. I could try to start it now, but it's kind of getting dark. There's no point. So I'll get that cleaned up. We're going to run over to the bench here in a second, and then I'll show you what's next for the build. Really excited about this part, and hopefully it'll make it more interesting. This is the current color of the white bike, as I like to call it, or the F650GS. This is the front fender, and it's technically Terex white, which is those like earth movers that you'll see on large construction sites and whatnot. It's a Raptor liner that's tinted, so you can actually tint Raptor liner different colors, and the color turned out okay. It ended up drying to look like a popcorn ceiling from a house from the 70s. And I really like the texture, but I really don't care for the color. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try it out on this front fender because it's an easier piece. And I bought the extra big can of Rust-Oleum, the turbo spray system in a gloss black. I think the black will give it a little bit more of a tactical look, and we'll see how that turns out. But the plan is tomorrow, or when you're seeing this, the next clip, we're gonna pull this fender apart because it's in 3 pieces, hit it with some Rust-Oleum turbo black, and see how the finish looks after that. I do think it will really give it a much more aggressive look. It'll keep that texture and just kind of change the vibe of the bike. If I like how this test piece goes, after that, we will go and we'll clean up the rest of the bodywork, tape off what we need to tape off, sand what we need to sand, and we'll hit it with the black. And then it'll really tie the bike together. I've got one other special component we're gonna add to the bike here once I get the color change done, and then it pretty much should be ready to go. We will end it off here today, pick it up tomorrow. Hey everyone, it's day whatever. I don't even remember. I'll put it down below at the bottom of the screen. Next steps on the white bike is I'm gonna pull this fender apart and we are going to spray it with that black I talked about. Excited to see how that looks, just kind of test it out. And then we will get to putting the air box and the rest of the parts back together on the bike frame, get that thing fired up, and we'll see how it turns out. Well, I have to say, this Rust-Oleum turbo can does really great work. It's the first time I've really spray painted something bigger than just some touch-up. So let me turn it around here. This is 1.5 coats-ish, just making sure I got good coverage. Really don't have many runs, to be honest. I mean, it's very wet and tacky. I'll definitely hit it again just because we're going from white to black. With the texture, you can still see some white undertones. But that's pretty good. I have to say, I think this is going to work fantastic. I think it looks great. So I'm going to let this dry up. And we'll hit it one more time. And we'll put it back together and try it on the bike and see how it looks. I think it's a winner. I really like it. So comment below what you think. But yeah, I think the black is definitely the way to go. I think it's going to look really good once we get another coat on there and it's nice and dry. So, all right, back to the bike. Yay, now for the fun part. They don't call it the Funduro for no reason. I've got the airbox, air filter, cover, main cover all right here. So I'm going to pull the tank off. We get the air box back installed with the air filter, get the carbs hoses all put back together, and then we'll give it another shot, firing it up, probably give it some fresh gas after my bench testing. Hopefully everything's going to cooperate. I think it will. And then we should be good to go. So let's get to it. I'm going to get this bike put back together. Well, the battery died, so I didn't really get the entire time lapse of putting the bike back together. As you can see, I'm dirty. The hat is backwards, so that means we're getting really close. The dirtier I am, the closer we are to getting to fire this. So anyway, we are pretty much together. I don't have a fix for the battery yet, so I'm gonna have to get that fixed before we really get it on the road. But I've got my jump box here. That'll work for the time being. What I'm next is I've bolted everything together. All the lines are connected, so I think we're good to go. I'll find out. I'm going to hook up the battery, or my battery jump box is a temporary battery, and we'll see if it cranks, and hopefully it doesn't leak. And then if we can get it to fire up and everything looks good, we'll park it there, and then I'll take you over to the front fender, and we'll check out how the drying process is going, see if it's completely dry. If it is, we'll put it together. Got the battery hooked up, black to red, red to black. Fuel's on. Got it on reserve. There should be plenty of gas flowing, it looks like. Carbs are not dripping. Knock on metal. Alright, let's turn the key on. Hard to do one-handed. We've got light. Choke on. Couple primes. First start on this girl always needs a little persuasion, so you just spray it down with some starter. That should do it. Okay. Try it now. Hey, idle's nice. Definitely a lot better. I think the gas is just a little bad. Did some tuning of the bike off camera just to get the idle right. I think I got to put some more gas in it, some fresh gas. It was running a little weird. Maybe there's some, water in the gas from sitting that was in that bike. Anyway, here is the front fender. It's looking mighty fine, I would say so myself. Drying up nicely. I'm really digging this color. It's going to make the bike look completely different, way more tactical, just way more badass in general. We're going to end the episode off here. Find yourself an old car, an old bike, fix it up, build it, don't buy it. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode where we do the final reveal of this bike. I'll come up with a name for it. I've got a couple more tricks up my sleeve, so look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much.